Now, some of you might think that LinkedIn automation is some sort of magical thing that will just generate you 10, 20, 30 meetings every single week without you needing to move a finger. Unfortunately, not the case. In fact, a lot of people who use LinkedIn automation actually don't generate any results from it at all. So let me tell you why. First off, my name is Lloyd Yip, and in the past 4 years, I've actually helped over 130 plus companies around the world build really successful marketing campaigns and scale their businesses to the 6, 7, and even 8-figure level. And many of those companies are in B2B, so they use LinkedIn as one of their major methods of lead generation. So definitely, the strategy can work if you use it correctly. In fact, I actually have a lot of different guides and other YouTube videos that you can check out right above here that goes into depth about how you can make LinkedIn automation work for you. That being said, I do think that there is a wrong way to use it, which will ultimately lead you to generating not just very few results, but you might even end up pissing off a lot of your prospects and potentially getting banned off the platform. So let's actually go into what those mistakes would be and how you can avoid them. Now, the first thing that you're really going to want to avoid if you're trying to use LinkedIn automation is just spam pitching. And I'm sure you've gotten some of these messages in your inbox in the past as well, right? People saying, hey, I can generate you all of these amazing results. I'm going to promise you the absolute world. But the thing is, your prospects are too smart for this. They're not just going to believe a random stranger off the street who's making these bold claims with essentially zero evidence. Especially when these people have been getting pitched like this for years. In fact, their inboxes are getting filled up every single day with messages just like this. So even if you could generate those results, why would they trust you enough to actually accept your request? And here's an example of the type of messaging that you definitely don't want to use, right? Where Zeal here, and I'm sorry for just calling her out, but she's more or less pitching me right away, directly in the connection request. Zero personalization, very obvious that she's just copy and pasting this to like probably as many people as she can find. I'm not even relevant, really. I don't need to hire developers. And even if I did, I certainly wouldn't hire them if they were just straight up pitching me out of the gate with zero conversation. So what is the better way? So here's an example of the copy that I might actually use, right? I'll share with you a couple different examples. With Allison here, you can actually see that the first message that I send out, we're not actually trying to pitch her anything. We're just trying to essentially say, hey, love to connect with other entrepreneurs. We'd love to build a connection with you, build a relationship, learn from you mutually. And it's a very, very light ask. We're not trying to actually extract any sort of value at this point. We just want them to essentially accept. And once they actually accept the connection request, then we can have a little bit more of a back and forth conversation with them on LinkedIn. If they don't actually accept the connection request, we're not able to even send them additional messages. So that's why it's so important that we keep the connection request note very, very chill, all right? And then once we actually get them to accept, then the following messages is once again not going to be as much trying to pitch someone to jump on a call, but instead it's going to be trying to provide value. Because the biggest difference is a lot of the people today that are doing LinkedIn outreach, they're not providing any value. They're just asking for a call right away. They're making some sort of huge claim. And literally, I'll call that out directly in my outreach, right? In this case, I say, hey, Allison, thank you so much for connecting. I bet you're probably kind of annoyed of people just pitching you in your inbox, making these insane guarantees and insane claims. Instead, I just want to add value. I want to give you this free 6-part video course. So this is much easier because now instead of trying to ask for a meeting, we're just going to try to give you something that you'll be finding valuable. If you want it, we'll make it a very, very easy. Just reply yes and we'll send it over. In this case, Allison actually does say yes. And of course, we're going to give her the video. The cool thing is, if she does ultimately watch the video, then the video in and of itself will potentially do a lot of the selling for us, which is great because a lot of the times you're not going to have enough credibility just sending out LinkedIn messages and saying that you're an expert. Why should someone believe you that you're an expert just because you say that you're an expert? But of course, if you actually give them evidence, then they might believe it with a lot more conviction. But more importantly than just sending out content, now that they've actually opted in to this piece of content, now you actually have an excuse to start talking to them. And that's actually what I do here, right? Because after I give her the link to the video, I'm now starting to ask, so out of curiosity, how do you get your clients right now? Are you just relying on referrals or are you doing something a little bit more systematic? And now she's starting to open up, right? She's telling me, yeah, it's mostly word of mouth. personal networking. I want to do something more systematic, but I don't really know how. Here's the thing. Because of the fact that I've tried to add value, now she's much more willing to open up and tell me about her biggest problems. And once I actually know her biggest problems, it becomes significantly easier for me to actually book her into a meeting. So moving quickly into the LinkedIn automation tool that I do use, primarily I'm using Dripify, and you can actually see my messages here, right? My send an invite message is very chill. I just say, hey, would love to meet other founders in these particular industries, would love to connect. And then what you just saw is essentially that message, but I built it into my automation tool. So this is what actually goes out. If you want to use an automation tool like this, by the way, you can actually sign up for Dripify with a free trial in the description box below. So you can just go and click on that if you'd like. Now, the second thing that you need to consider in order to make LinkedIn automation work for you instead of fail is volume. If you try to send out over 100+ messages every single day, unfortunately, this is not actually allowed on the platform. In fact, if you try to push your sending too far, you're likely to actually get in trouble because LinkedIn doesn't actually think that this is normal sending behavior. And if they start thinking that you're using bots or if that you're breaking any sort of terms of services, then you're likely going to end up having your account frozen for 24, 48 hours, or worse, if you're a repeat offender, they might just close down your account entirely. So what this means is that you're not going to just be able to use LinkedIn and spam blast like a million people and just rely on a numbers game. Because it's a much lower volume, you really only have one of two options. Either you could actually make sure that your one LinkedIn account, you're sending a lower volume, but then all of your conversations are much more personalized, much higher quality so that you have a better conversion rate, or you're willing to actually invest in multiple LinkedIn accounts. And by having multiple LinkedIn accounts, obviously you can increase the total amount of sending volume, and that will widen your area. Now, of course, you could do both, right? If you actually had a sales team, for example, then you could potentially have multiple LinkedIn accounts, and because a sales team could spend individual time and energy into modifying every one of the conversations and making them personal, because obviously as sales rep, you're paying them to take that time to be personalized with your prospects, then you could have best of both worlds. You could have higher volume with more accounts while having a higher conversion rate because of personalization and quality of the conversation. Obviously, salespeople, they will cost a little bit more money, but as you scale a company, you're going to put in more expenses and payroll in order to generate a larger return. So that's an option as well. But long gone are the days where you could just send out on a single LinkedIn account an insane volume of messages and just let it fly fully on autopilot. Now, how would you actually stay safe, right? Back to Dripify here. Dripify does have some pretty cool features that will allow you to pretty much keep your sending volume under a reasonable amount. Of course, if you're using certain softwares that allow you to send out hundreds every single week, you'll probably get in trouble. Whereas Dripify, what I like about it, you're actually able to set these limits and activity controls so that ultimately you'll always stay safe. Now, you don't want to necessarily just crank it to the maximum, even if you're technically able to. If you're using a somewhat new LinkedIn account or a LinkedIn account that just doesn't have that many connections, then you're going to probably want to keep this a little bit lower, right? Maybe 20 or 30. Whereas for me, my account's been around for years and years. I have over 10,000 connections, so I can crank it up to a higher level, but just keep some of these things in mind. Another thing that'll keep you safe is just not having a lot of spammy messages, because even if you're only sending out a really small volume of messages every single day, if those messages are very spammy and your recipients are consistently flagging you as spam, then you're still probably going to get in trouble even at a low sending volume, right? So that's why it's really important that the quality of your messages is also really good. Now, the third thing that you want to keep in mind in regards to whether or not you should use LinkedIn automation, and if you are to do so, how to make it successful, is who is your ideal client profile. If you are selling B2B or some sort of higher ticket offer, then frankly, LinkedIn makes a ton of sense. For example, if you're selling consulting services or an agency, or maybe you're selling some sort of high ticket software offer, obviously all of those audiences that I just mentioned, they spend significant amounts of time on LinkedIn. So it makes sense that you will be actually prospecting them there. As well, keep in mind that with LinkedIn, because of the fact that the volume is a little bit lower, you can't really get in touch with that many people. If you're going to be making significant money on this channel, it's going to be because you sell a higher ticket product. For example, something that's $5,000, $10,000, $20,000, whether that be a one-time payment or maybe your customers pay that over the course of a year or multiple years. But the reason why this is important is because with LinkedIn, you can only send out so many messages every single day, and then that means only a small percentage of those people will ever become a customer. So if using LinkedIn, you're only ever really able to get between 2, 5, 10 customers per month, you're not gonna really be able to make good money from this channel unless your pricing is actually of a high enough rate. Because think about it, right? Let's say you sell a $100 widget. If you're only moving 10 of those per month using LinkedIn, that's like $1,000. That's just really not enough for it to be a significant needle mover in your business. Whereas if you're selling this higher ticket agency offer or software offer or consulting offer, yeah, you only sell 5 units of that per month. That's fine because you're moving each of them at $5,000, $10,000. You're making pretty good money there. So keep in mind that some offers and some audiences are going to be a better fit for LinkedIn, whereas others might not. Now, the final consideration that you're going to want to make if you're going to be using LinkedIn automation is what is your willingness to actually do some manual work as well. A lot of people, they get into this idea of LinkedIn automation being this magical pill which will allow them to be lazy and pretty much just click a button and do nothing, but results will still flow in. But the reality of LinkedIn automation is actually more complicated, where if you actually want to generate really good results, yes, you have some sort of automated software that'll send out initial messages and initial connection requests, but the conversion doesn't necessarily come in just because of that one message that went out. The conversion really comes more so in the actual ongoing conversation. It comes in when the prospects respond and you actually can have a back and forth dialogue so that you can actually get them to trust you enough to opt into a call. So as a quick example as to why it is so important to follow up, if you recall earlier, I had showed you this message that I will be sending out utilizing automation, right? And the purpose of this is, of course, to get a reply. And this part is entirely automated and it saves a ton of time. But once the actual prospect responds, now you actually are in the game. Now you can actually book them into a meeting. Meeting doesn't actually get booked because of the message. It comes from the back and forth dialogue, which occurs after the reply. So the nice thing about Dripify is that you can actually go to your inbox and all of the replies are right here and you can very easily manage these conversations. But that's really the key, where you do need to manage the conversations. And here's an example, right? I have a conversation with Sebastian. It was started. There was obviously outreach that was done, but now we're actually in back and forth dialogue. And in this back and forth dialogue, you actually see us asking discovery questions. We're trying to figure out their goals, how effective his LinkedIn strategy has been so far at actually generating him results. And only when I actually figure out his goals and his pain points, and do I feel as though he's actually a good fit, will I send him over a calendar link to book. If you don't actually take the time to discover, you're gonna accidentally book a bunch of people who are not even good fits in the first place, which is actually a waste of your time in the long run. And another downside, if you don't actually have this back and forth discovery and conversation, is that you're not going to build enough trust in order to book a call. Because if you're just going straight for the kill and not having any sort of dialogue or conversation, sometimes people might just think that you're a little bit too, much of a stranger, and they'll be just too skeptical to jump on a call. Whereas in this case, part of what builds a trust with Sebastian is that I'm willing to have a little bit of a back and forth conversation. You can see here we sent over a calendar link and we were able to book. Now this flies in the face of what a lot of people are looking to do on LinkedIn automation, right? They think that using automation is, once again, some sort of shortcut so that they can be lazy and just click a button and have everything run all on its own. Whereas in reality, the way that you actually make this work is by having your automation start these conversations and get replies, but then once the replies are actually in, you still have to manage them somewhat manually. So, of course, you could do this on your own if you'd like. A more scalable way to do this is having an appointment setter, and I've created many, many videos talking about how you could bring in an appointment setter, they can manage your inbox, and then you can delegate away all of this appointment setting. But this is really, really critical, and you don't want to take a shortcut on this. All right, so at this point, I've spoken a ton about in what situations you should use automation and in what situations you should not. Just so that you have a very quick overview of the automation tool that I use, I prefer Dripify. I think it's the best, partially because of all the metrics that it provides me. I'll know exactly my acceptance rate, my reply rate. As I showed you before, it allows me to set limits and activity control so that I stay safe. Really great because I can have a centralized inbox to manage all of my conversations. If you want to have multiple LinkedIn accounts, you can actually attach multiple to a single Dripify account so that you can manage just more volume, more conversations, more accounts at the same time. And then as far as like the actual campaigns, no other software have I found provides you the same level of flexibility in terms of your campaign construction, where you actually have branching logic, right? Where if they don't accept your connection request, you can actually like a post and maybe comment on something and follow them. Or if they do accept, then you can obviously send out your messages and you can set out parameters as far as when the messages should go out. You can use personalization snippets such as first name, last name, position, company, all these type of things. And obviously, you can also integrate directly with Sales Navigator to build your lists. So it is by far the most effective software that I've found in terms of actually helping you set up your LinkedIn automation. So not everyone should do LinkedIn automation, but for those who will, because it makes sense, this is the best tool. You can check out their free trial once again in the description box below. So guys, hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you're actually looking to install LinkedIn processes in your business, if that's something that you think would be valuable to you, then we can definitely help you out. It's a big part of what it is that we do at our business. So just book a call with us in the description box below. Like I said, we've helped hundreds of clients at this point all around the world with building very, very profitable LinkedIn lead generation campaigns, and we can do the same for you as well. So with that being said, good luck, and we're here to help you if you think that it makes sense. All right, cheers.